David at the time is about 15, 16, teenager. He has been a shepherd boy all this time for many years. He's kind of obscure, in the backwoods of Israel, but he serves the king by playing the harp for him. King Saul has broken faith with the God of Israel, which was a big step for the country as well as for him. And it's been causing a mental decline in his life that is affecting everybody, affecting his whole family. And David's harp playing seems to soothe the nightmares that he has. Jonathan, King Saul's oldest son, is very, very traumatized. He's closer to like 38 years old at the time. He's definitely an experienced soldier. He's slated to be the king one day, but is trying to process, what do we do with, my father who's still, very close to me, but he's unraveling at the seams and the country is unraveling. And then David walks into their life, and Jonathan sees from the very beginning that there's something special about this boy, and that is that he's been chosen as the next king because of his special relationship with God.
Hey everyone, and welcome. I am Morgan Giss McDonald, founder, CEO of Paper Raven Books, and I have with us today someone who has written a historical, inspirational Christian novel based on Old Testament Hebrew Bible called My Brother the King. And I have with us today author Jubilee Lipsey. Thanks, Jubilee, for being here.
Thanks, Morgan. Glad to be here.
We are super excited because we are kicking off your brand new trilogy with book one, My Brother the King. There it is. It's beautiful. It is a deep dive read. And I would love for you to tell us a little bit, Jubilee, about kind of who do we get to meet in the pages of this book? Who are some of the characters that we're going to get to meet?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of layers to that question, actually. The first sort of layer is that for those of you who may not have made the connection yet, it is a historical biblical story from the Bible, from the Hebrew Bible, Old Testament. And it is the story in the barest form of David and Goliath, and David and King Saul and Jonathan and all of those characters. So very brief recap. It's a very famous story. David is the shepherd boy who's chosen by God to be the king of his country while he's still a shepherd. And he ends up killing a giant named Goliath to save his people. And this book is really the origin story of his friendship with the prince at that time, whose name is Jonathan. And Jonathan is significantly older and definitely in line for the throne, but he recognizes that God has given the throne to this boy who saved Israel, and he reaches out to him in friendship instead of rivalry. And that friendship really forms the bedrock of all of the chaos that's going to follow as the country is sort of turned inside out, figuring how to process an anointed king and an apostate king, and Jonathan is sort of in the middle, so his perspective is very important. But this book is focuses on the origin of their friendship. My Brother the King is Jonathan's estimation of David.
So who are David and who are Jonathan in the pages of this book? Because David and the David and Goliath story, usually it's a 5-sentence summation of what happened. We don't really get to usually experience them as people. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of who is David in this story and who's Jonathan in the story, and how do they what's that dynamic look like?
Sure. It's an amazing story, and it's been one of my favorites for a long time. I've been studying it and thinking about it for a long time. David at the time is about 15, 16, teenager. He has been a shepherd boy all this time for many years. He's kind of obscure, in the backwoods of Israel, but he serves the king by playing the harp for him. King Saul has broken faith with the God of Israel, which was a big step for the country as well as for him. And it's been causing a mental decline in his life that is affecting everybody, affecting his whole family. And David's harp playing seems to soothe the nightmares that he has. Jonathan, King Saul's oldest son, is very, very traumatized. He's closer to like 38 years old at the time. He's definitely an experienced soldier. He's slated to be the king one day, but is trying to process, what do we do with, my father, who's still, very close to me, but he's unraveling at the seams and the country is unraveling. And then David walks into their life, and Jonathan sees from the very beginning that there's something special about this boy, and that is that he's been chosen as the next king because of his special relationship with God. And obviously that isn't common knowledge yet. And so Jonathan, having the benefit of that special vision, has to decide what he's going to do with it, because his perspective will mean, is he going to give David a hand up, or is he going to let him sort of drown in those expectations?
Wow. So I love you've already added this just layer of richness, right? So I've grown up in the Christian church and still and I've read, this story before at some point, but I would never have pieced together some of those bits of information that you just shared, that David was so young, 15, 16, that Jonathan was, really in his prime, would have been in his late 30s and an adult, a full-fledged kind of confident adult, and thinking about how those two would meet each other in the scenes that were told in the Bible is just to some extent, I'm like, I can't believe I've never thought about this before.
Yeah. And that's what is so cool about biblical fiction as a genre, is not necessarily just about, because we're very familiar in our culture with retellings. Everyone's retold Little Women, retold, all the classics and several Bible stories and such. But biblical fiction is a little bit different in its purest form. It's not just a retelling, because then you could just read the Bible story again. Why do it if you're not going to flesh it out? And it's mostly about fleshing out what's already there, that, these stories are written in narrative form in the Bible. And so there's not a lot of information given all the time about, the implications of these decisions. And because it's not our culture today, we don't often think about what it would have been like to make some of those decisions and be facing some of those things. So it really takes an empathetic journey for the author to get inside their heads before you can help the reader do that.
What's something that in the retelling of this story between, David and Jonathan, but also kind of that surrounding sort of cultural transition that's happening with the whole realm. What's something that either you discovered that you were really excited to share in this book, or maybe something that your early readers have already told you, wow, I didn't know about that, or I didn't know that happened, or I had never thought about that. Is there anything that kind of comes to mind? I know this is kind of out of the blue question.
It is and it isn't, because I've had to think about it for a long time. And I think that I've been meditating this past year on at what point do you stop being just a writer and start being a professional? And I think the point is when you start thinking about what you've got to say to other people, as opposed to just, I've been enjoying this process myself for a long time, but when does it become about what you want to say to other people? And I think that's when you become a professional. And what stood out to me from this story, and it's sort of it's the theme of the Bible study that I've written as well. And it is that, the way I put it in the Bible study is world-changing friendship starts with a headlong pursuit of God. And my question that I brought to this story was, a lot of people loved David. A lot of people, the Bible says, loved David, but why did Jonathan's love last, whereas Saul's didn't? King Saul was, initially the Bible says he loved David, but as soon as he became a threat, their relationship eroded immediately. And he not only wasn't his friend anymore, but was actively trying to destroy him and take everything away from him. And Jonathan's love lasted. And the only difference was that Saul had completely turned his back on God, and Jonathan had a source for that love. And even when things were unraveling around him, even when he was facing the loss of his own position, his own fame and stability and things like that, his love lasted because it was connected to God and his vision of David. He saw God in David, and that's what bound them together. So it was really a journey into where did this friendship come from and what made it last. That was the biggest thing that shocked me throughout the process. And I think that's what a lot of people are going to be finding out.
That's beautiful. It's just those little things that when we are quickly reading through, whether it's just, history, just like straight up history, or whether it's Christian history or Hebrew history, that we forget about them as people. And that's really beautiful that this book is able to bring that. And so if you were to categorize this book, if people like action or adventure, or like what kinds of genre would you say is similar to My Brother the King?
It's definitely a drama. It's an adventure. Lots of war and brotherhood, honor themes. I've been thinking a lot lately about the things that people watch and read lately. It's funny that we are tending to gravitate back to kind of like an ancient theme, whether it's Vikings or medieval, or more of like like dragons or knights, or those types of ancient themes that are so different. Like the lifestyle is so different from our culture. But I think there's a lot of themes that we're missing. There's that honor hunger inside of us that we want, just to consume something that connects us to what it was like to understand, family ties and land, and knowing who you were in connection to your race and God, and just understanding that your choices affected your people, and all of that. Just very cool adventure themes.
I love it. So if you like action, adventure, drama, relationships, inspiration, got it all wrapped up. And if you happen to be, part of let's say a small group or a Bible study or a church, there is a Christian Bible study companion with the book, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So the story comes from the Hebrew Bible. So anyone who has grown up, in the Hebrew or Jewish tradition would certainly relate, would know all of these characters and all of that, because it's based in the Jewish text, the Hebrew Bible. And because you brought a particular Christian lens to it, you were able to also sort of layer on top some Christian Bible study resources for people. Can you tell us a little bit about that companion study?
Sure. And it is called My Brother the King as well, because that's the name of the whole project. And it focuses more on this book. If you were to pick which novel the study connects to more, it would definitely be My Brother the King, because it focuses on that friendship and where it came from, and what it did for both of them, but why it sustained itself throughout the whole craziness that followed, and the switching over of the kingdoms. But I truly, for a Christian studying the Bible, we can't fully do it without those elements of the Jewish Bible, and there's a lot of our history is layered in there. So when I studied the Bible for those themes for the Bible study, I got a lot of inspiration from Jewish thought about this story. Over the centuries, Jewish scholars and rabbis have a lot to say about the meanings of these characters and the themes as well. So it's beautiful to see it all come together. So many layers.
So do you think like friendship would be kind of the underlying kind of theme, that if we were to come at it from let's say it could be anything from a college small group to, adult or young adult, kind of like groups from church or Bible studies, that friendship might be one of those sort of underlying themes in the study?
Absolutely. How friendship connects to calling, because a lot of times it's very easy for us to think about, calling, what we were meant to do individually, but then there's a lot of struggle when you start to connect it to other people, that, somewhere along the line, my calling is going to intersect with other people. And how is that going to go? Is that going to blow up in my face, or is it going to, sustain me? Our callings really can't be fulfilled outside of some kind of community. And so friendship is a huge part of it.
What a perfect time. We're kind of one step out of maybe this COVID time where maybe many of us have lost touch with friends, or maybe our friendship has been mostly through phone or FaceTime or social media, but like kind of trying to reestablish or renew some of those friendships. This is the perfect time for a study like that, to say we're not friends just because we happen to see each other, because we really choose to be. And to call back to what you said earlier, because I see God in you, and I see God bringing our paths together. That's pretty beautiful.
Yes.
So Jubilee, can you tell us a little bit? I mean, this was not just like you woke up one day and said, I'm going to write about David and Jonathan. Like,
I know.
you alluded to quite a bit of research, right? So not only the study itself, but the surrounding sort of historical sources and the craft of fiction itself. Can you give us a little insight into what it was like for you to write this book?
It was a whirlwind, and it did, probably to someone on the outside, it did seem like it was out of nowhere, because I've been thinking about, I've always wanted to write about this story, but I didn't know, as a child, obviously, how it would come to pass. And I didn't know about biblical fiction as a genre yet. So I've been meditating on these characters for years, just kind of storing that stuff up. This sort of thing has really been a mandate for me. It's been on my life since I was a kid. But specifically, this book and this series did kind of come like a lightning bolt in 2020 in March, when I was sent home to work from home. I had a moment where I just realized that you have no idea how long this is going to last, and you could completely waste this time, or you could completely embrace it. And it was a total supernatural moment, because this book was not on my radar. It was not what I was thinking about working on. I was headed for a writers' conference. I was kind of starting to study, research publishing, but I was not going to start with this one at all. I didn't think of it as a series. And it literally just the next day, I just started writing. And for every day since, like throughout 2020, I wrote every day. And that came out, and step by step, figuring out where I was going to put it, meeting Paper Raven was all a huge miracle, because it wasn't on my radar. And it was one of those things that just was meant to happen. It decided needed to be here.
Well, sometimes you just can't say no.
Yeah,
like, okay, I can take a hint, and I will take the support, and I'll see it through. And I hope that if anyone's, watching us down the road, that if you feel like a book has been on your heart, maybe for years or decades, that it can come to fruition. And sometimes we don't know exactly how it's going to come to fruition. Sometimes it's quick, sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but when it's time, it comes. Would you say that's similar to how you felt?
Absolutely. And I would encourage anyone to, because now that I see all the layers of it, it's shocking how much preparation has been happening over the years. And I didn't know it was preparation. So all those years when no one knows what you're doing, that is the time you need to be doing what you're passionate about. Do not wait for somebody to pay you to do it. Don't wait for someone to be watching you. Just be doing it, because a lot of the book itself came out of nowhere, but the buildup has been for years. And I had a lot of notes and a lot of thoughts built up over time that if I had not put those away, it would not have been ready. So definitely, it is a huge process, and you have to love the whole thing. You have to love the whole process.
Yes. If you guys are here and you're watching this and you're like, I want to get my hands on My Brother the King, the good news is that because we're launching the first book of the series, so this is a 3-part series. This is book 1. I love that you got your Paper Raven mug right there, Jubilee. Hashtag author.
Product placement.
That's right. You can actually grab a copy free today. So if you go to paperravenbooks.com/mybrothertheking, all one word, paperravenbooks.com/mybrothertheking, that'll take you to Amazon. You can grab a free copy, go ahead and download it to your device or to your browser right now while you're here and thinking about it. And then you can, read it on the weekend or whatever, but go ahead and grab it while we are here and chatting about it. And if you know a small group or a study who's interested in something like this, the companion is free with the book. Free book, free companion. Tell your Bible studies, tell your small groups, and go ahead and grab a copy right now. So Jubilee, I'd love to know kind of, you've walked through this path now. I mean, I know we're just launching book 1. There's still more to come. And the next books are right on the heels. So 2 and 3 are just around the corner because we've already got them prepped. We've already got them locked and loaded. And so if you guys want to go ahead and start reading, just know that 2 and 3 are already ready, basically. And I would love to know that, like, what you wish you had known, maybe. You've been thinking about this book for a long time, and maybe you didn't know that it was going to come out this year. But if you could go back to a younger version of yourself, is there anything that you wish you could tell that younger version of yourself, or anything that you wish you had known about what it was going to take to publish these books?
It's probably a good idea that I couldn't have talked to my earlier self, because I probably would have scared her. But I would have said that definitely it was going to be harder than I thought, for sure. But that's not a closed door. And a lot of times it can feel like a closed door when something is more of a challenge than you thought, or you thought there was only one way to go about it. And for a long time, that the publishing subject seemed like that for me. Like it was described as there's only one way to go about this. You have to have an agent. You have to be picked up by a famous publisher and go on TV and all of that. And kind of like the cheaper by the dozen kind of journey that she goes on. It has to look like that. And when you come to that point and you realize maybe it's not going to look like that, it's not a closed door. And that was probably the biggest thing that I learned, that if something is meant to happen, and that sounds very up in the air, but it's actually very purposeful. If you know that you're meant to do something, you'll be able to push through the challenges and figure stuff out. And honestly, the timing is everything. So if it's not happening right now, that's just more preparation for you. And trust me, when you get there, you'll wish that there was more preparation. So Paper Raven has helped me a lot to weather all of the new stuff, and helped me to be able to offload some of those responsibilities so that I can do what I do best. But yeah, I would definitely tell myself to not be afraid of the opposition, because that's what it takes to create something real. If you never get past figuring out what is this actually going to take, then it just stays in the fantasy realm. So when I felt how hard it was going to be, I realized, wow, I'm really doing this. So
that is so true. Because as long as it stays abstract in your mind, it's like, oh, that's doable. Oh, that's possible. I'll worry about that later. But as soon as it starts to become a reality and you're putting the steps in place, you're not only writing the words, but you're looking at book covers, and you're thinking about editing, and you're thinking about launch promotion. It's like, oh, this is real now. And there is a bit more of a push against, you've really got to want it. Right. And I think that's worth people knowing. It's like, if you feel like there's some amount of, maybe resistance is the wrong word, but like, this is getting a little bit more difficult to keep walking forward, it just means that it's becoming real, and you got to want it. But if you do want it, it's okay. It's going to be possible.
Yes. It is. Okay.
It's been such an honor working with you on My Brother the King, Jubilee. We're so excited. It's already hitting number ones. We were just talking about it before we hit record, that it's number one in Christian Bible study guides, number one in Christian Bible history and culture, number one in Hebrew Bible, Old Testament meditations. So folks, if you want to grab onto this series as it rolls out, you can be part of it with us. You can go to paperravenbooks.com/mybrothertheking. Let me try that again. paperravenbooks.com/mybrothertheking. It'll take you to the Amazon page. You can grab your free copy today. Go ahead and binge read book 1. Jubilee, you were just saying before we hopped on that, like, even like your mom friends who are super busy with kids, it was like they churned through that. It's a page turner. a little bit past your bedtime, but it'll be totally worth it. And then 2 and 3 are right around the corner. So
Nice.
thank you, Jubilee, for having the courage, really, to put this book out there, to put so much of your heart and soul and research and yourself into this book, and to share with us really the vision that you've been given for David and for Jonathan, and for helping us to have a totally new perspective on a familiar cultural story that that we get to live and relive in a new way. So thank you for writing my book.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure, and I'm glad it's not over yet.
Plenty to come. And in the meantime, y'all grab that copy of My Brother the King, and we'll let you know as soon as the next are ready for you. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.